Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, with daily insight on the Nasdaq-100 index, or the NDX, which is made up of 100 of the largest domestic and international non-financial innovative companies listed right here on the Nasdaq stock market. The NDX has been the barometer for U.S. large cap growth and also one of the best performing indexes over the last decade and a half, not to mention one of the most liquid index ecosystems in the world. Joining me this Monday afternoon, we have Ryan McCormack, factor and core equity strategist at Invesco, for an update on weekly performance. Ryan, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks. And let's pull up our first chart here. Take a look at that weekly performance of the Qs versus S&P.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jill. Good week for stocks, particularly for QQQ, as QQQ and QQQM traded higher by 5.31%, better than the S&P, up 2.94%, and maybe something that we're not used to thus far this year, value only up 1.14%. I think when you start to look, the street is getting more comfortable with the notion that maybe this rate move higher is in fact a function of perceived broad-based economic gains, not so much driven by lasting inflationary risks, at least not at the moment. You look at some of the data from the last week. I mean, non-farm payrolls on Friday, 916,000 gain for March. That was against estimates for 660,000. February, they revised higher by nearly 100,000, up to 468,000 from 379. This represents the biggest gain since August. And I think as we continue to look at vaccine rollout, as we continue to look at restrictions being lifted, right, I think the employment picture is certainly a very good barometer of where we stand. Even with this improving payrolls, we're still below the pre-COVID levels. You look at something like an initial jobless claim, certainly in a downtrend, but still kind of at or above that previous all-time high that was set back in October of 1982. And as you look at the chart here, we have the shaded line is non-farm payrolls, and the blue line is initial jobless claims. You can see in March and April, huge divergence, right? That's when claims spiked and you saw payroll growth decline pretty significantly. You saw some improvement over the summer, pause across the fall and early winter as we had that second or third wave, depending on how you want to define it. And then from there, we've started to see both of these indicators improve with sort of this vaccine distribution rollout. And again, this is really supportive of Fed statements where there's some way to go in terms of meeting full recovery or seeing full economic recovery. Speaking of the Fed, the minutes came out today. I think the main takeaway there was just that it's going to be some time before they begin to taper. Separately, there were comments from the Chicago Fed President Charles Evans today. The economy, again, poised for strong growth, really driven by momentum from vaccines, government spending, and accommodative policy. Did mention that the higher inflation rates this year likely temporary, and sustained 2% inflation not to be kind of seen for a while. So, the main takeaway from his statement: policy is on hold.
And Ryan, to wrap up here, where are we seeing sector performance?
Yeah, so this week for sure, we saw a bounce back from QQQ overweights. Technology, communication services, consumer discretionary. As you look at individual names, some news. It feels like we haven't heard much from the QQQ heavyweight stocks. You have news that Microsoft was awarded an Army contract worth up to $22 billion for AR headsets. Stock was up nearly 7% for the week. Tesla up nearly 9% for the week after it announced roughly 185,000 first quarter vehicle deliveries. That's a record. From there, we saw analyst upgrades. There's optimism in that stock around the infrastructure bill and some potential changes in the EV tax credit ceiling. So some positive news from some of the QQQ heavyweights. I would expect to see some more newsworthy events, as both of those stocks are scheduled to report earnings in just over 3 weeks, along with the rest of QQQ heavyweights. So as we progress towards earnings season, we'll be interested to see if we get some additional single stock news.
And we will certainly be covering that with you, Ryan. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.